but just reflecting on, I suppose, the summer and the year as a whole, just explain to us how challenging it's been for yourself, the team, and everyone connected with Lancashire.
Well, as you can see, 2020 has been a unique year. It's been very, very challenging, very difficult, both physically and mentally. You know, the club has been through many challenges over its 156 years in existence, but this year has really been extraordinary. Nobody kind of predicted a pandemic. We've had challenges before, we've lived through recessions and world wars, but you know, pandemic to hit us as it did with no notice, and effectively our business model for the year was crushed overnight, and then we lost our dear chairman, David Hodgkiss, at the start of the crisis. And so really, it's been very, very difficult, but I think the word resilience goes through the club's veins. It always has done, and we've kind of demonstrated with the fantastic group of people that we have working at Lancashire Cricket and Emirates Old Trafford that, you know, we're fighters, whether it's on or off the field, and that, you know, we've fought our way through it. There was one model that showed us running out of cash in July. We built a way around it, you know, and yes, we've had to tighten the belt, make cost cuts, but working our way through of building on the 2019 cash flows that we generated and the support from Metro Bank, and building a plan to get through the year. And we're now in November, and we'll get through the year, which I can tell you back in March was not a done deal by any stretch. And so huge credit for the team on site to have got us to where we've got to, and it's something that I'm very proud of personally, to have been part of that group that have got the club to where we are now.
Obviously, Emirates Old Trafford, as well as the Ageas Bowl, kind of delivers biosecure cricket for the internationals this summer. Just how much of an effort and how proud are you that we delivered that over the course of the summer? I'm
hugely proud about the biosecure product. You know, we talk about history and magic moments, whether it's Tendulkar's maiden 100 or Warren's ball of the century. And 2020 will go down as a year in history. Perhaps not the history that we want, or a history that will be as memorable as those moments that I've described, but it is still history. You know, let's not forget the enormity of what we've achieved as a club and as a game. You know, we brought international sport for the first time anywhere in the world, ourselves in the Ageas Bowl, and that's a huge achievement, and it's something that cricket can be proud of. And if the ECB hadn't shown the leadership that they did to put together a very large budget to deliver behind closed doors cricket, if ourselves and the Ageas hadn't been available, then you could have been looking, as Tom said in front of DCMS, a £300 million loss for the game this year. And I'm proud to have played a part in saving the game's finances this year and delivering the broadcast revenues. And it's something that I will remember for a very, very long time.
Financially for the club, how important was it to deliver those games for us just to get through this summer as well?
Well, it was crucial for a number of reasons. You know, the staging fee was a nominal amount. We got some money in the hotel, which enabled us to keep staff employed and not make redundancies. You know, we weren't able to operate that. Basically, I think it's NHS workers, fruit pickers, bizarrely, and elite sport. And other than those three categories, you couldn't operate hotels. So we were effectively able to keep the lights on, keep the taps running, keep people employed in the hotel. And you know, that was very supportive, and that definitely helped us pay the bills and make payroll during the summer. So you know, it's been fantastically financially important for us in terms of our cash flows of getting to where we are now.
A sizable chunk of our members kind of upgraded to platinum members at that time, and you know, over the course of the summer, how important has their support been over the course of this year?
Our members have been fantastic this year, and we would have very much struggled to get through the year without them for a number of reasons, really. You know, they could have just taken the pure transactional approach and said, no, I'm not getting any matches, so I want a full refund. And generally the approach hasn't been that at all. The approach has been incredibly supportive. It's been understanding and recognising that the club has needed that cash to get through the year, and a number of people upgraded to platinum, as you've said. But also a lot of people did ask for a refund, but then use that refund to pay for a 21 membership. So effectively the money did stay in the club still. So, and either of those things has been fantastic. I also recognise that for some individuals, personal cash flow at a very difficult time meant that they absolutely needed that money, and I completely get that too. And I think the main thing is people have been incredibly tolerant that we haven't actually been able to show any matches to Lancashire in person this year. But actually the launch of Lancashire TV this year, I believe, has filled a massive gap in that regard.
Just moving on to domestic cricket, in the end we got a good chunk of the season in August and September. At one stage I think that was probably looking unlikely, but how pleased were you that we had a decent, couple of months of domestic cricket?
I'm absolutely delighted that we got cricket away. I know at the start of the season there was very much a purpose that from the ECB that quite rightly that protecting the international games and the broadcast revenue that then fed into distributions for counties had to be protected and had to be prioritised, and that was correct. And when the ECB executive managed to start working with the overseas boards and the broadcasters to kind of build that BCB plan, it became very clear to the first class counties that we also needed domestic cricket, and it wasn't as important to the ECB, and you can understand why, that's not a criticism, but for the counties it was massively important because we understood and knew that for our members, but also from a mental health perspective for our players, is we needed to get domestic cricket on, and we were able to work with the ECB and come up with stage 3 guidance, which effectively enabled us to get some domestic cricket away. And very much so. Even as late as June, it wasn't certain that we'd get cricket, but there was a few CEOs from the counties who really worked hard with the ECB to do everything we could to make sure that we got some domestic cricket away. And I was delighted that we got the Willis Trophy and a truncated blast. It was fantastic.
And I suppose from a Lancashire perspective, we had the additional challenge of Emirates Trafford being a biosecure bubble, and training at Chesterbrook and Hall and games at Liverpool. How much of a challenge and how much of a fair play to the squad in general, players and coaches, for dealing with that challenge and just getting on with it?
Yes, very much. Our players were accepting of that, but actually from a baseline of no cricket to how do we get some cricket on, I think they were very accepting and very welcoming and very open to the fact that, look, we'll play our part as players. We're not perhaps like football, and we don't have prima donnas. Well, not many, and but effectively, the players recognised that they wanted to get cricket on, and part of their playing their part was being understanding the fact that they weren't going to be able to do much at headquarters, and the players have been first class. The strength and conditioning and the physio team, Sam Byrne, Todd Webster, Dave Roberts, they've been fantastic as well, actually, looking at what they've had to do to keep everybody on the park. And if you look at, some games were cancelled, some players ended up catching COVID, but not at Lancashire. And I think that's a credit to our medical team, who basically worked with our players and reminded them constantly of their responsibilities. And we were very fortunate in that respect. The other thing I would mention though is the off-field side. I mean, I remember a Zoom call. It's in the world of Zoom calls about getting Liverpool up to stage 3 guidance to enable domestic cricket. And I can tell you that first call, it was not straightforward in any way that we could do that. It was very, very complicated to get an outground up to stage 3 standard, and there were a number of people who felt that it wasn't possible in the time that we had, because you remember this was all decided very late. But it's a credit to our operations team and our health and safety guys that they wrote the risk assessments, they wrote the plans, site visits, built an overlay, and we delivered a number of games this year at Liverpool, whether they be women's or men's elite, and they did it with aplomb, so no, hugely proud.
And generally speaking, a positive season on the field as well for Lancs. Good performances with a young and homegrown emerging squad as well.
Yes, I was absolutely delighted that this year we blooded 6 new first-class Lancashire pathway debuts, which was amazing. You'd never normally get an opportunity to do that. We didn't have an overseas, and actually it gave us those opportunities. And to me, and all of the players played well. I mean, George Balderson looks a real talent, former England under-19 captain. You never quite know whether somebody playing England under-19 can cope, but you see a player like him and you can see that he's got massive potential, real presence. He's going to be a player. And then I think a memorable day for me was seeing Jack Morley and Tom Hartley spin us to victory at Liverpool. 2 very, very young players doing that. The pressure of fourth innings spinners, bowling a team out. You can get 38-year-old spinners who can't do that. The pressure gets them, but our guys showed the way, and I think all of the players that made their debuts. I think we've got a rich team of young talent that can be a core of Lancashire's team for years. And I think also in the Blast, I think we had the second youngest ever team to make the quarterfinals. All of the counties agreed not to have an overseas, and ultimately, us and Surrey both got beat by Dan Christian on finals day. And we didn't play as well as we'd have liked, but I'm hugely proud of a very young group performing as they did to get us to finals day in a year, of that age group, and that can only stand them in good stead when they're all Crofty's age later on in their lives.
Just on that overseas player point, do you kind of stand by that decision in terms of giving young homegrown players that opportunities this year?
It's always been Lancashire's way. We have a target to have 7 or 8 players coming through the system. We've always developed players. I think there was a recent stat that showed, I think, that currently out of the 400 odd professional cricketers, that I think 11% had come through Lancashire's system. I mean, that's a massive stat as far as I'm concerned, and I think probably probably us and Yorkshire probably deliver something like 25% of the pathway, which is unbelievable if you think across the game, and it's something that we're proud of, and we're going to continue to do.
And just moving on to women's cricket, how important and how pleased were you that we got some competitive women's cricket underway, both internationally but also at a domestic level as well?
I think it's been fantastic this year that we've been able to really push on with the women's game. It's the only area within the whole of the ECB that has been ring fenced from a funding perspective, and I think that's absolutely the right thing. I think I'm delighted that we're going to have 5 girls on retainer here in the Northwest that aren't playing for England but who are played professionally to play cricket. I think that's a massive step forward to the game. Australia have had 100 professional women and girls cricketers for a number of years, and there's a reason that they're the best in the world. We came on leaps and bounds with the KSL, but it was not really sustainable. The only way you really get sustainability is that you have a local grassroots pathway that builds up, and actually being able to go into school and saying there is now a career for you to work as a professional cricketer, even if you're not good enough to play for England. I think that's a fantastic opportunity. This year was a starting point from the regional perspective, and the appointment of David Thorley as our Women's Director of Cricket has been absolutely fantastic. Former ICC Women's Cricket Manager. He's built and brought a real stability and robustness around strategy and policy and a kind of programme management piece. And I'm delighted that we've been able to appoint former England women's head coach Paul Shaw as the joint Lancashire Regional and Manchester Originals women's coach for 2021, and he's been great as well. The players have really responded to him. We've got a long way to go in terms of building that talent point and working harder. Particularly, we've done brilliantly well with developing spinners. We need to work harder on our seam bowling and developing young batters as well. So a lot of work to do, a lot of potential, but there's money there from both Lancashire and from the ECB. I think it's really exciting.
How important is that head coach announced, appointment in terms of just giving some consistency over the next couple of years for what is a very, very young group of players, isn't it?
I think it's very important to have that experience. I think particularly we've got some very young girls in the group. The standards lower down aren't as good as they could be. I think working now with Cheshire and Cumbria, we've built a really good solid partnership in that space. And our plan is that we want a lot more girls playing cricket across the Northwest, which will only increase the standard. But then actually having somebody who's been there and done it with England, who can help bring that kind of long-range planning piece and working through how those girls can develop and improve, because at a young age you almost need to double in your ability every year. It's very, very challenging to do, and I think in Paul Shaw we've got somebody who's absolutely perfectly placed to do that.
Just looking forward, I suppose, a slightly tweaked format in terms of domestic structure, in terms of the red ball cricket? What are your kind of thoughts in terms of the new Willis Trophy and that kind of format?
Yeah, I think the regional piece this year worked. I think it made it very competitive overall. I think one of the challenges with the county championship in previous years in the two divisions has been a number of games become dead rubbers, and there's a number of teams that have no aspiration to get out of the second division and want to focus on white ball cricket, and you can understand that. I think what the regional structure enables us to do is to provide more competitive, provide more of a strategic imperative for people to invest in red ball cricket and to develop those red ball skills. I think one of the key reasons in the past why people didn't want to move away from two division cricket was a lack of competitiveness at the back end. But I think with the way they're looking to structure prize money and the way they're looking to structure a meritocracy in terms of where you finish in terms of your different standings, I think that will absolutely give reason and strategic imperative to those games at the end of the season. And I think it'll be something different, and I think what we've agreed at the moment is that we're going to run it in 22 and then run it in 21 and then review again prior to 22. So we'll see how it goes.
Obviously, we'll have a lot of people watching this desperately missing coming to Emirates Old Trafford. Obviously, we're in a bit of a state of flux at the moment and things change very quickly, but kind of come April, May next year, what's your view in terms of getting crowds back in here at HQ?
Well, I'm a glass half full guy, so I'm positive, I'm enthusiastic. It's something I really want to happen. Obviously, I can't control the pandemic, but I do believe there are a number of things to be hopeful about. At the moment, I can see, we're entering a second national lockdown. I can understand a lot of people feeling a bit down about that. What my view is, there was something that really resonated for me recently was Professor Chris Whitty said that the science was having a lot of shots on goal, and I think it was an interesting view. I think my view is probably the science has the opportunity to clear the ropes a bit more, but to make it more of a cricket analogy. But things are positive from the science side. It may not feel like it at the moment, but massive progress on vaccine development, and there are strong views that a vaccine could be available for the most vulnerable by January, if not possibly even by Christmas for the over 85s. That's a huge step forward. If you take a vaccine, and now in Liverpool everybody's going to be tested weekly. So I think a volume, affordable test could be a game changer as well. So I think the looking to do mass testing and the developments of a vaccine, also the developments of treatments that mean that mortality rates drop. All of these things significantly change the dynamic from a disease that can just kill, that obviously mean that we have to change where we are as a society completely. Now I think, so having all of that into account, I believe there are a number of things to be positive, and whether we can start in April, but I do believe that by the summer that we'll be getting decent numbers of people, decent crowds in to Emirates Old Trafford to watch cricket, and it's something that I'm looking forward to. I think the mass testing thing could really give us a way through that, and that's something that I want to work on with the ECB and government, because I think Boris described it as a license to mingle, but I think if you think about it, if you can get a test that you know the answer in 15 minutes, and you can only get in the stadium if you're negative, why can't you have a full stadium on that basis? So I think there's some really positive, encouraging things. You can never say never, sadly, and we will have our contingencies and we will look to do behind closed doors, but I genuinely believe with the way that the science has moved on from where we were last March and April is night and day. People forget that really the NHS were trying different drugs. They didn't know what treatments worked, what didn't. They learned on the job. We were nowhere near a vaccine. It hadn't even been thought of because the pandemic had only just started. And people complain about testing now, but there was no testing regime back then. So I think if you put all of that in together, then I genuinely believe we're going to get people and crowds back watching Lancashire cricket in England at Emirates Old Trafford next year.
Also on England, we're looking forward to welcoming India for a Test match next year. How much are you looking forward to that Test match, but also the opportunities around India that we have over the next couple of years?
I think India is really exciting for us. I think a lot of people don't quite realise the scale of the opportunity. When you've got over 1 billion people that are obsessed with the sport that we play as a professional team. You know, sadly we don't have that in the UK, but this is something that is just a no-brainer in terms of us building that supporter base. And I genuinely want Lancashire Cricket to be every Indian second team, and that's something that we aspire to in terms of that reach and growing that Lancashire Cricket supporter base and looking east. And it's something that's really exciting. You know, COVID permitting, we're looking to do a pre-season tour out there. England are touring India, COVID permitting as well, around the same time. And then obviously India are touring the UK, and you know, we're looking at a September Test match. It really could be a fantastic Indian summer, and it's something that will give us plenty to work on and attract a number of fans, and hopefully Indian-based fans, to come over and travel and stay in a hotel and other hotels in the area and taste our northern hospitality with some fantastic cricket.
Just finally, just moving forward to probably the first quarter next year. You know, how important is it for us as a club, for business events, for the hotel industry to really pick back up kind of in that first quarter next year?
Well, it's very important at the moment. You know, the conference and exhibition centres have been closed for 6 months. So that makes the first quarter very challenging. I think the capacity limit of 30 has really scuppered us. It's made it very, very difficult. You know, the point in the conference business has been our commercial engine room that has funded all of our on-field activity over recent years, and to have that stopped overnight is challenging. Next year we've got a very difficult year to get through, because even when you open, a lot of the events are long range in terms of 6-9 months lead time. So it's going to be very hard for us to turn that on, but I do believe that kind of demand is there. It's stuck in the pipe. So as soon as we can get the clearance, and actually with the mass testing again, you know, when you're talking about an event of 500, you know, it's actually a perfect way that we could trial on lower numbers what we could potentially do for stadiums, sports for high numbers later in the year. So it's something that is very important to the health of Lancashire Cricket Club, that we can reopen our conference and event facilities sooner rather than later. And if we can get the testing in place, then I believe that hopefully we can persuade the government to look at a relaxing of those guidelines sooner rather than later.
And with the experience and the knowledge of our team here at Emirates or Trafford, and what we've achieved and delivered with biosecure cricket, we're in a good place in terms of the event delivery, aren't we?
Me and a number of colleagues, having lived through that behind closed doors biosecure experience, we can often forget and take for granted what we went through. And you're right, it was unique, probably unique amongst many sports venues and business venues around the country, and that we had to create an environment where 300 odd people were moving around indoors in a complex environment, but using multiple zones, and having Hilton Clean Stay and the digital key, which means that potentially you can go to your room and without going anywhere near reception, with all our Perspex screens in reception and in our F&B areas, managing 2 metre distancing for individuals in the restaurant, which a lot of restaurants just don't do. But we had to do it, and because we did that and we got that experience, we were able to launch Safe in One Place, where we had a Hilton Hotel Clean Stay, we had appointment facilities with all of our social distancing and everything involved. We were able to develop that kind of safe conference and events product that we're ready to go. We're ready. So I think as soon as the government can support us, perhaps with the testing regime, we're good to go.